Dick Van Dyke turned 99 last month and everyone thought he was doing great. He still dances with his wife Arlene and works out 3 times a week, but now Arlene Silver is speaking out for the first time. At 53, she's been hiding something about Dick's real condition. She says there's a curse that comes with living almost 100 years. Recently, she broke down and admitted the truth about what's really happening behind closed doors. What she revealed about Dick's daily struggles will shock you. Dick Van Dyke came into the world on December 13, 1925 in West Plains, Missouri. His family lived in a small home where everything felt tight and simple. His father worked as a traveling salesman for the Sunshine Cookie Company and was gone more often than he was home. His mother worked as a stenographer and carried much of the load. Because money rarely stretched far, Dick learned early how to entertain himself with jokes and little stories. That habit grew into something bigger over time. And even though life felt humble and quiet, it gave him a sense of gratitude that stayed with him forever. When he turned 7, everything shifted again. His family moved to Danville, Illinois, a small town with around 30,000 people. Danville felt warm and familiar, the kind of place where neighbors waved from porches and most folks knew each other's names. Dick soaked it in. He listened to relative swap stories, tried out silly voices, and copied the kind of jokes he heard at family tables. Danville High School was small, only a few hundred students. But it became the place that opened his world. He joined drama and music activities, trying little roles and watching how laughter filled the room. Those simple moments pulled him toward entertainment and made the idea of performing feel like something real. Then came a strange shock. When he was 18 and applying for a passport, he found out his birthday had always been wrong. He discovered his real date was December 13, 1925, not the earlier one he had celebrated all his life. For a moment, he felt like time had tricked him. The truth changed nothing and yet changed everything because it made him look at his own story in a new way. He carried that memory into later years and often shared it as a reminder of how family secrets can shape you without you even knowing. Dick's family tree stretched far, reaching back to Mayflower passenger John Alden. His heritage mixed Dutch, English, Scottish, German, and Swiss German roots. His mother's Christian upbringing shaped him, too. For a while, she hoped he might become a minister, but one drama class in high school pushed him in another direction. He felt something spark inside him. The stage looked brighter than any sermon could. That moment became the start of who he would become. At home, life came with its own noise. His younger brother, Jerry, was born in 1931 and loved getting into trouble. He hid Dick's homework and pulled small pranks that made the house shake with frustration and laughter. Later, they would work together on the Dick Van Dyke show. But even as kids, their energy fed off each other. School brought more surprises. Dick's classmates included Donald O'Connor, Bobby Short, and even a cousin of Gene Hackman. Standing beside such talent showed him what entertainment could be. Every small school play felt like practice for something bigger. By 1943, Dick graduated from Danville High, and the world was deep in the war. At 17, he tried to enlist as a fighter pilot. He stood tall at 6 feet 1 inch, but weighed only about 135 pounds. Each time he tried, he was turned away for being underweight. After pushing through several attempts, he was finally accepted, but not as a pilot. Instead, they trained him to be a radio announcer. He took IQ tests, physical exams, and endless drills before being stationed in Toledo, Ohio. His eyesight was weak, and every flying test fell apart. So, he ended up announcing for a show called Flight Time. It brought news and entertainment to the troops and slowly pulled him closer to the world he was meant for. At Camp Crowder in Missouri, he hosted shows for soldiers and teamed up with Phil Erickson. Together, they created a silent comedy act they called the Merry Mutes. Their routines poked fun at officers, and one performance went so far that both men were nearly court-martialed. Officers said their sketches were disrespectful, but instead of punishment, they received a warning. Dick walked away with a lesson. His humor had a rebellious edge. He could feel it shaping the way he performed. After the war, he returned home at 19, but the welcome felt hollow. He had no job, no money, and no direction. He sold vacuum cleaners door to door. People slammed doors in his face. He felt embarrassed and tired. But something inside him refused to fade. He still believed in entertainment. That belief pushed him toward radio again. In 1947, he met Margie Willett at a church dance. She had a quiet charm and a steady nature. She came from a conservative background and wanted stability. While Dick dreamed of bright lights, their differences were real. And even in those early days, they felt the tension that would follow them for years. Still, they cared deeply for each other and tried to build something together. Then something strange happened. In 1948, he performed a skit on the CBS radio show Bride and Groom and $1,200. The producers invited him and Margie Tomari on the show. They said yes. 15 million listeners heard them say their vows while standing between two microphones. The show gave them rings, furniture, appliances, and a 10-day honeymoon. But the honeymoon ended with them broke in a relative's basement. It was a perfect picture of the life they were stepping into. Full of hope and hardship tangled together. Their early marriage was rough. They lived in Phil Erickson's house because they could not afford their own place. Dick and Phil formed a comedy team they called Eric and Van. They worked on slapstick routines every day while Margie felt more alone and worried with each passing week. Dick's dream demanded time, and Margie carried the weight quietly. By 1946, Dick had already started hustling at WDN in Danville. He earned $35 a week and filled the station with jokes, local stories, and all-night shifts. He kept at it for a year before leaving for California in 1947. He believed the West held better chances. In Pasadena, he landed at KPISH Radio and co-hosted a show called Merry-Go-Round with Phil Erickson. They worked 5 days a week and earned $50 weekly. Dick lived in a tiny tent trailer eating peanut butter and drinking cheap coffee to get through each day. The show got listeners, but the pressure made him turn to occasional drinks. It was small at first, but it would not stay small forever. Their act, Eric and Van, struggled in nightclub after nightclub. Smoky rooms, hecklers, awkward laughter. Then in 1953, they won a CBS talent contest and landed a radio job at Wagga in Atlanta. Within months, they had 20,000 listeners and earned $300 a week. But the partnership cracked. Disagreements split them apart, and Dick was left standing alone again. In 1955, everything hit him at once. After a gig, he was arrested for drunk driving, even though he had not been drinking. Nervous exhaustion made him look unsteady. Sponsors pulled away, radio jobs dried up, and suddenly he was 30 years old, $10,000 in debt, and Riodito quit the business entirely. Still, he kept going. In 1957, he appeared on The Johnny Carson Show. He bombed badly, forgetting half his jokes, but Carl Reiner noticed something in him. Reiner invited him to audition for Broadway. In 1958, Dick got a small role in The Footman that paid only $25 a week. It barely covered food, but it helped him find his place. That pratfall over the ottoman in the pilot finally changed the network's mind. Suddenly, there was a show. Suddenly, there was a spark. Over 5 seasons, from 1961 to 1966, the show delivered 158 episodes and reached as many as 30 million viewers. By the second season, it sat in the Nielsen Top 10. Reports said Van Dyke had lived almost 40% of his lines. His Holy Smokes became one of those lines people love to hear, and the chemistry with the cast pushed the show into something legendary, but fame never comes alone. Jealousies and pay fights grew. Larry Hagman once auditioned for Van Dyke's role and did not get it. Mary Tyler Moore, who played Laura, was paid less than her co-stars early on, and that turned into heated salary disputes. Van Dyke stepped in more than once to calm things down, but the tension never fully disappeared. As the show kept rising, Van Dyke's private world kept sinking. By the early 1970s, after the series ended, he was drinking heavily, 3 to 4 martinis every night. It reached a breaking point when he was hospitalized for 3 weeks. In the same month, Margie entered rehab for pills. Their family felt the weight of everything he tried to fix in silence. By 1966, he could not go on. He was tired to the bone. He was burning out. Even though CBS wanted more seasons, he scared to stop. The entire cast agreed, choosing to end the show while it was still strong. Life magazine covered the moment. Afterward, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and a $1 million syndication deal. Yet, the victory felt heavy. Margie had been raising their children almost alone on their ranch in Phoenix, and his long absences left marks that were hard to erase. His sons, Christian and Barry, appeared on the show, but those moments were rare. The work that made him a legend also kept him away from them. Then came Mary Poppins in 1964. Van Dyke wanted it badly and convinced Walt Disney to give him the part of Bert and also the old banker, Mr. Daw Sr. He trained with a dialect coach for weeks, trying to master a Cockney accent. When the film came out, Londoners laughed at it. Many still call it one of the worst accents in movie history. Still, the film became a huge hit, making $12 million at the box office, which would be more than $900 million today. He won a Grammy for the children's soundtrack. Yet, behind the cheerful dances, he was already struggling with nerves. Julie Andrews pushed him hard in rehearsals and Hefton slipped away to smoke, a habit that fed an addiction he tried to hide. Later that same year, he starred in What a Way to Go. The movie lost $4 million, and critics were brutal. Even a cast full of stars could not save it. Van Dyke said later he regretted doing it because it had made him doubt his place in film. After that failure, he stepped back toward television, hoping to rebuild himself. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang came next in 1968. It was a worldwide hit. Children loved Caractacus Potts and the joyful songs. But while he smiled on screen, he sank off it. He battled depression, even suicidal thoughts. People on the set made jokes about his nose, and every joke cut into him. Hestel performed dangerous stunts, holding on to the work because it was the one thing he knew how to do. Years later, he talked openly about this time, sharing how loneliness and alcohol pulled him down. At one point, he was offered the chance to play James Bond twice. Once in 1967 and again in 1971, he said no both times. He laughed that his bad accent alone was reason Renato turned it down. During this era, he also starred in Divorce American Style, which touched too closely on his own marriage problems. Rumors spread about him and Angie Dickinson after they worked together in 1965. With 4 children at home, these rumors added more pressure to a marriage already shaking from addiction and distance. Dick Van Dyke stepped into the 1970s with a comeback that looked bright in paper. The new Dick Van Dyke Show launched in 1971 and he walked in with a $50,000 paycheck for every episode. It was one of the biggest TV deals of that time and everyone expected it to soar. For a moment, it felt possible. Then slowly the shine faded. The writing felt thin, the premise shifted, and the cast kept changing until the original spark was gone. Even his wife, Hope Lang, said her role mostly came down to asking, "How was your day?" which showed how empty the material had become. Ratings slipped each season, and by the time the show ended in 1974, after 72 episodes, Van Dyke had fallen into heavy drinking and money worries. He later said it was one of the darkest stretches of his life because the world saw smiles while he felt himself sinking inside. Then a new light came in 1980 when he stepped onto Broadway as Harold Hill in The Music Man. He was 54, full of energy on stage, and even earned a Drama Desk Award nomination. Still, behind the curtain, he was hurting. Dance rehearsals injured his back, and the pain grew so sharp that he turned to painkillers just to make it through each show. It reminded him of Margie's long struggle with prescription drugs, which made the whole chapter feel heavier. Booth kept going until the final curtain because he had promised to give the audience everything. His fans never saw the ache hiding behind his smile. During these years, he kept appearing on The Carol Burnett Show, and audiences loved every bit of his goofy charm. But in real life, he was slipping back toward the bottle. He had tried to recover in 1972 and even attended Alcoholics Anonymous quietly. Yet the pressure off work and expectations pulled him back. He promoted anti-smoking PSAs at the same time he was fighting relapses that left him ashamed. It showed how recovery can't shake under the weight of everyday life. His family life moved in mixed directions. Barry, who began as a child extra in Mary Poppins in 1960,